Yvonne, my name is Poisonblade and I hope all of you are having a nice day. So for today's video we are back in Kayan al-Bashar for season 3 of the project, which is going to start off big because I am building Tower Ridge, which besides having a lot of houses, also of course includes towers, which, keeping a spirit with basically every build that I built, don't really have a clear function besides looking pretty. And then the build of today is also going to be a Koala Habitat, but it's kind of an experimental build. I wanted to try out some new things when it comes to the setup of the habitat. And yes, this does mean that the koalas turned into guinea pigs for today's video. But keeping in spirit with all of my videos, the habitat is only like 3 minutes of today's video because I wanted to build towers and houses. But anyway, with that being said, let's get straight into today's video. So you might already have noticed that some things are different compared to last speed build of Kayan al-Bashar or even Valhalla. And that is that I'm building in a completely empty map. And that is because Kayan al-Bashar doesn't really have the best frame rate anymore. I mean, the last time that I saw 60 was when I first opened the map when I started on Kayan al-Bashar. So yeah, whenever we are in the Elysian Fields, which if you didn't know is the area for season 3 of Kayan al-Bashar, it's kind of like the outskirts of the city. So that's why there's a lot of houses, because we're basically building the suburbs. But yeah, when we're in the Elysian Fields, I have a steady 30, 27 frames. Whenever I point the camera even slightly towards the Royal Palace or the Mirage Mountains, it drops to 20. And luckily it's a steady 20. It does drop when it autosaves, which kind of makes me scared every time because I think Kayan al-Bashar is crashing, which I already crashed Aston's PC and one of your guys' PC when you were trying to load Kayan al-Bashar, so wasn't joking when I said Kayan al-Bashar is going to melt some PCs. But yeah, this was basically done because I wanted to try and see if I would build faster if I had 60 FPS instead of 30 or 20. No, I did not build faster. I think I built kind of the same speed, maybe even slower. I'm probably going to do this for like the larger builds such as these towers. Probably not for the smaller builds, because smaller builds are usually a little bit more terrain dependent. And also, I discovered that the last thing that I recolored in season 2 of Kayan al-Bashar were the gypsy wagons, which meant that all of my color swatches were like bright green or yellow or blue and such, and I didn't have my favorite tints of beige, because Kayan al-Bashar is just a sea of beige. And no, beige is not my favorite color, it just makes sense for the buildings in Kayan al-Bashar to be mostly beige, or like brown or reddish. But yeah, second thing that I did differently compared to the last seasons of Kayan al-Bashar is that I've started using Pinterest as a reference point, or like when I'm looking for reference images, instead of, well, basically only using Google image search, because everything that you've seen in Valhalla and Kayan al-Bashar and Isla Pacifica is based solely off of images from Google search. And now I actually have like a Pinterest board just with reference images for the Elysian Fields and then some for Kayan al-Bashar in general. And yes, honestly, I did originally think, oh, Pinterest is the place where you go if you want to like get ideas for a wedding, which yeah, that's basically a non-existent idea for me. But anyways, that's basically what I did differently, and I want to actually get onto the main topic of today's video. And this is honestly why I love being back with speed builds, because I mean, speed builds, the amount of times that the voiceover is connected to the actual build is a miracle, if it ever is. It's like countable on maybe 2 hands at most. So yeah, I just like to start the recording and see where I go. I'm like a wild squirrel in a forest of, I don't know. I wanted to say nuts, but I don't really like nuts. Yeah, maybe like a sea of chocolate. I'm getting off topic again, but anyway, so main topic is basically I saw a post by Mike Sheets asking people for their general opinion on Planet Zoo, and I didn't read every comment on that post because yeah, there were, I think by the point that I'm recording this, 150 comments, so yeah, didn't do that. But the general thing that I saw keep coming back was people being bored by the game, that people were kind of, well, let's just say how Planet Zoo or Frontier has been handling DLCs, how they are kind of lackluster, and the lack of communication. I'm going to give my opinion on these topics. Nobody asked for this, but again, my video, my voiceover, nobody's stopping me, so I'm going to give my opinion on these things, because I want to. But anyway, so first topic that I wanted to then approach was the lack of communication, and this, I mean, just in general, I agree with every topic, like the lack of communication, DLCs being kind of lackluster, and people getting bored with Planet Zoo. But I'm going to end with like the bored thing, but yeah, the lack of communication. Yeah, Frontier, don't take a page out of EA's book, because Frontier basically is kind of radio silent in between packs, and then when a DLC gets released, or is like in the 2 or 3 weeks following to a release of a DLC, then Frontier, I almost want to say EA again, Frontier, don't take a book out of EA's, or take a page out of EA's book. Whenever a DLC gets released, then Frontier basically comes out of the woodwork, and then their Twitter becomes really active again, and they become really active again, basically. And yeah, that basically means like, oh, you're coming out of the woodwork just to sell us something? Getting EA vibes here. Again, don't follow EA's book, because that, I mean, EA, I think, has been voted the worst game publisher a couple of times. Just a side note, I don't like being involved in drama, I don't like to start drama, but I have found out that I love watching drama. So yeah, you can guarantee that I have watched every video when it comes to controversy surrounding The Sims 4. I myself have stopped playing The Sims 4 after University got released, because the game is just really stale and it keep doing the same things, and that's kind of just boring. So yeah, stopped playing The Sims 4 after that. Really considering buying Sims 3 again and installing that, but yeah, there should probably just be more communication between Frontier and their community, besides when they want to sell us something. Like, some people have suggested like a roadmap, which I know is kind of like a touchy subject, because if they don't follow the roadmap or don't keep up with the roadmap, then people are going to get angry. But Frontier, people are angry right now because we don't hear from you anyway, so there's probably a lot of people who would just be happy to know like, oh, what are you going to do this week or this month, or what's like happening at Frontier right now, because right now, for all we know, Frontier could be freaking in a pizza having a party, hopefully wearing masks, but anyway, so yeah, it would probably be good to have a roadmap, or just to have more communication of like knowing what's going on, because right now we know nothing besides nothing, basically. Yeah, there are some like random animal facts whenever there's like a national animal day or like a worldwide animal day. There's sometimes the screenshot of the week, and then there's like, whenever there's an update, then they post like a link to the update notes. Yeah, for me this might be just me, but it feels really just like that could be a robot. And when it comes to customers, they don't really like to be interacted with by a robot, or a robot feeling entity. Communication is bad, and what there is just feels a little bit like there's a robot behind it. So yeah, Frontier, please change the way you do the communication. Like, even if you don't want to give us a roadmap, please just give us a little bit of insight, like what's going on, because right now we have nothing. So yeah, going on to the second thing, because otherwise I'm going to keep stalling on the communications thing, but the lackluster DLCs, and I think I've voiced this with every DLC, that like, building wise, yes, they are, well, I have not really used the Australia pack after There I built like the Australia builds, but building wise there's like a lot of pieces in them. But animal wise, which is the core of the game, they are really lackluster because I have counted, well, a few months ago probably, but I think that there are like 14 animals that have got released in a year. And then there's the issue of like, there's no gameplay changes with any of the packs. Any of the DLCs that have been added didn't really change gameplay. Like, yes, we got vending machines, but how much do those really change gameplay? Like, I think most of us just now want animals that change gameplay, that feel different compared to other animals. Because yes, there's the thing of like, oh, some animals are reskins, and then, I mean, we all know about the polar bear fiasco of like, I think when it comes to the animals, Frontier is approaching the game differently than how the actual gamers are approaching it, because I think Frontier is approaching it as like more of a conservation thing, but the actual people who are playing the game are playing it as a zoo game. Those things like good for Frontier to like show us like, oh, this is how an animal's natural habitat should be, and this is like the issues with their natural habitat and such. But yeah, it's still a zoo game, so people are still going to want to try and build like their local zoo and want to build realistic zoos. Like, I'm one of the few who's building a fantasy zoo. Well, Kayan al-Bashar is not really a zoo. Valhalla also not really. None of my builds are actually really zoos. Which actually gets me onto the last topic, which is that people are getting bored by the game. And for me, I'm not really getting bored by the game, but that's mostly probably because I don't really use the game as it's intended. Like Frontier, I don't think intended for floating worlds. Kayan al-Bashar, I don't think Frontier ever thought that that was going to happen. Yeah, I can really see that like people who want to build like their local zoo, who want to build realistic zoos, are really getting bored by the game because there's like not that much animal variety. Also, unpopular opinion, going back into like the lackluster packs, but I really actually love the Arctic pack, because, I mean, you can see it in this video. Also, quick to note, this house is taken from Pinterest, and it had the most adorable elderly couple in front of the building. Of course, I changed the house a little bit, but that couple was like, alright, we get it, you're adorable. So yeah, their house is now in Kayan al-Bashar. But anyway, so yeah, I love the Arctic pack just because of the wooden pieces. Like the animals, man, I don't think I've ever really built a habitat for the Arctic wolf. I also constantly want to say Arctic fox because that's the animal I really would have wanted. But yeah, I don't really get bored by the game, but again, that's because I approach the game differently, and usually whenever I post like an image of Kayan al-Bashar or Valhalla on Reddit, there's usually at least one comment that says like, oh, why aren't you using a building simulator? Yeah, I'm using Plant Zoo as a building simulator. So there's just this vast difference in how Frontier is approaching the game and how I am approaching the game, and then I can still understand how people are getting bored by the game, because when it comes to animal variety, there's not that much. Again, in a year there's been 14 animals if I'm right. Like the last two packs had 5 animals each, well 4, because again, I don't really actually count the exhibit animals because they're basically static boxes in a way. But not really the greatest of looks, and Plant Zoo could be a long-standing game, because, I mean, we have all somewhat known about Zoo Tycoon, or maybe you don't know, but Zoo Tycoon 2, at least, is long abandoned by the developers. Like, that's, I mean, there's a new Zoo Tycoon, which is kind of lackluster, so was an area for Frontier to step in with Planet Zoo. But Zoo Tycoon 2, or just Zoo Tycoon, is a game that has been around for so long and is kept alive by like the modding community and by the people who want to play that game, because there's a huge amount of animals, if I'm correct, in that game. And Plant Zoo could be a long-standing game. It's just that Frontier, I think, needs to change their approach to how they, well, use, first of all, their social platforms, how they approach the game in general. And unpopular opinion, but I actually didn't mind that there isn't going to be like an anniversary update. What I will mind is that, well, Aston said this to me that he thinks that there is going to be a big thing coming in December, which, yes, I followed economics or an economics class for like 4 or 3 years in high school, and now I think I'm an expert, but I do think that it's a, well, great marketing move at least to have something in December, because that's the holiday month, so people are getting gifts and, you know, you want to have something newly on sale for that month. But I am going to be bothered if their next DLC is again 4 animals that don't change gameplay, that they will crawl out of the woodwork 3 weeks in advance, and then give us like some teasers of animals, and then after the pack is released that they will go back into the woodwork. I really hope that Frontier changes their approach to the game, because it could really be a long-standing game. It's kind of a hard game to get into. Like, I know that because a lot of people are like, oh, this looks great, and then, yeah, I also have, I don't even know how old Plant Coaster is, but I basically started with Plant Coaster right from when it was released, and then moving into Plant Zoo, like the building mechanics are the same. Like, there's not a big difference in building mechanics, so I have kind of an analytical mind, I think is what you say. Like, I can easily take buildings apart, which helps really greatly when it comes to building things in Plant Zoo, or just building things in general. And then I also have a lot of experience, which I know a lot of people won't have the time to basically build what I built, because yeah, this probably is like 5 hours worth of building that has been mushed into a 20-minute speed build. Probably not a lot of people have that amount of time, and then there's also the amount of time trying to find references and such. But this could be a long-standing game if Frontier again changes their approach. Again, it's just, I'm not getting bored by the game because I approach it so differently than others. And yeah, that might be the reason why I never really felt bored by it, never really lacked inspiration. Well, I wouldn't say never. There have been weeks where I just didn't have any inspiration, but that's, I think, kind of normal for you to just have an off week. But yeah, that community tab of Mike Sheets really triggered something in me, like, oh, I want to talk about this. But I think I have been somewhat vocal about these opinions pretty much with every release, besides the Arctic pack, but then I also didn't really get the Arctic pack early. Like, I only started getting packs like early access with the South America pack. Yeah, there's just this weird radio silence, the disconnect between what the community wants and what Frontier sees for the game. Because again, Frontier, I think, approaches the game as like a conservation thing, while the majority of the player base approaches it as a zoo builder. And so there's just this, I feel, disconnect between what Frontier wants and what the player base wants. And then there's this lack of communication which doesn't help things in the slightest. But anyway, I'm going to stop rambling about this. These are just my opinions. And just a quick note, yeah, most of like the habitat building was me trying to figure out how to get the koalas on the roof. In the end, I had to change it up again because for some reason they wouldn't get on the roof. So yeah. Anyway, I'm going to do a small tour because Tower Ridge is just so large that I don't want to do it with just cinematic shots. So see you in 5 seconds probably. So we're back because I wanted to do a tour of this build instead of just cinematic shots, because honestly I just wanted to tour it, and it's a pretty huge build and I didn't think cinematic shots would do it justice, and I just want to tour things, want to ramble about things. So I mean, I think we get why this is called Tower Ridge. Again, these towers, I don't know what their function would be. Maybe they're like glorified watchtowers or something. They just look pretty. And yes, I took these off an image that was a full castle, but I only took the tower off of it. again, I easily can take things apart in my mind. I'm not taking things apart in real life, don't worry about that. But we're going down one bridge. I also, just to note, we are, I think, in the suburbs of Kayan al-Bashar city, or city-wise. The city is called Kayan al-Bashar, not Kayan al-Bashar city, but that's why you will see a lot of homes. All of these are built off camera because they are tiny, and I think I got the point across with the bigger buildings. These are just smaller versions. Also, just to note, all of the, I'm calling first floor, but I think the majority of people would call this like ground floor. But all of the windows on like the first floor are usually, for me at least, higher up. They're smaller because, well, you don't want sand in these windows or through these windows. You don't want a lot of heat through the windows. And it's safer, I would say, because, I mean, no way are we going to squeeze into that window if we want to steal shit. So, yeah, all of the ground floor, or for me, first floor windows are usually smaller ones. Which, when it comes to a zoo, like stereotypical, or well, stereotypical, realistic zoo would probably have the larger windows on, well, the ground floor, because most of them would be like shops or something. But yeah, Kayan al-Bashar is a world, so wanted to make it, at least in my opinion, realistic. And now over another bridge, which, yeah, don't mind the edge of the royal palace. I haven't built on that because I was too enamored by what I'm building, or what I built for you guys today. This is what I love the most. This is my favorite area, at least of this build, because wait a minute, I'm just going to look at it from this angle. No, not the greatest angle, it's always this angle. Actually, did I put the sun back in the right corner? Yep. But yeah, I definitely took some pages out of the Book of Valhalla when it came to rock work. Like, I learned a lot when it came to rocks and cliffs in Valhalla. And yes, this area is called the Elysian Fields. So right now we're in a cliff area, but I like that. Also, the path is just like this really, well, I would say dangerous cliffside area. Like, we are going to glitch through the rocks, but right there is just I would say 250-meter drop. Kayan al-Bashar isn't really that high off the ground, but I imagine it would be like 250 meters or something above ground. But yeah, for plants too, it's probably like 50 meters above ground, which is still, I think, you wouldn't really survive that drop. But anyway, so on to the largest part of today's build. Yeah, maybe I should go to these. Yeah, this is probably the better view. Watchtowers, or just towers in the background, and then the suburbs of Kayan al-Bashar. So this is going to be, well, let's just say it's going to be suburbs up until this point. So if we go further that way, it will be more like farmland and more open area. But let's just say everything, if you look straight from here, everything on that side will be more like urban. Because, yeah, I want the city to be huge. Which is probably going to fry my brain, because building houses, like trying to make them all different, is a little bit difficult. But yeah, so this is the Koala Habitat. And as you can see, I tried to get them on the roofs. They wouldn't get on this roof, which is what I tried for the longest. So now their sleeping areas there in that corner. And yeah, no walls or any kind of fences. They can't go over this because, as you can see, there's some elephant grass right below ground, and that actually hinders like animal pathing. Like, they can't get over this, so I can just build open enclosures completely. I mean, I did that with the PFAS. And probably the koalas are below here somewhere, because, I mean, I get it. They're like in the date palm grove because it's, not as hot there. There's always some kind of shadow, or just, you're not in the blazing sun of Kayan al-Bashar for autosave. Yeah. Again, my heart drops every time there's an autosave because it looks like the game is crashing. But I hear something, but I don't... Yeah, I do hear something. Oh! Where the fuck did you guys come from? Yeah, I'm keeping that in. This is one of the few times that you guys are up here. But yeah, this is how close you can get to the koalas. Alright, teleport onto the beam. Like, the lady designer has pooping animals, my animals just teleport. Aww. Are you pooping? Don't say you're pooping. You might be pooping, but it's probably glitching through the floor. But yeah, so as I said, this is a farming area, so date palms. There's probably also going to later be grain and all of those things. Ah, they're finally getting food. But yeah, the koalas just love to be in here and they rarely go up there. Even though they can. They are lazy animals, and I mean, I get it. I would also stay here just because of the shades. I just love the date palms. Like, besides the Sudanese incense tree, which, yeah, is everywhere basically. I always like the date palms as well. Also just as like ferns, or I think you call them, because these are also date palms, just sunk into the ground. I also like that when you go back into the royal palace, like the first thing that greets you when walking this spot is the theater or the amphitheater. But again, this is my favorite area just because of the cliffs. And it's still like the fields of Elysian, because there's still farming going on. But then there's farming basically everywhere in Kayan al-Bashar, because again, it's... For me, a greater sin if you have a fancy like medieval or historical area and there's no farming anywhere around. Because that's a major staple of how people fed themselves by local farming. But yeah, you will see a lot more houses coming on. But the next video is probably going to be a staff area, because yeah, he came all the way from Atlas Village, another... Either it was a frame drop or just a autosave. But yeah, he's coming all the way from, you can't even see it, almost to that tower there. So yeah, this is basically what's going to be the first build of Kayan al-Bashar Season 3. We can get down here actually. This is an area that's not accessible by the koalas, but yeah, next build will probably be there. Can we see the koalas from here? Probably not. I mean, I see a... No, that's a beam. Anyway, that's going to be it. I should probably get like a better area for like a view to just end the video on. So we're going to my cliffside again. I also just want to climb that cliffside, but that's my squirrel self talking to me. So let's end it here. The sun through the date bombs, the towers in distance, and the nice cliffs. But yeah, hope you enjoyed today's video, hope you enjoyed this tour. I might do more of these if I build anything really significant and that's huge like this. But anyway, hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, there's of course the subscribe button, there's a button or a bell button that I'm sure the apocalypse is going to happen if it works, and there's a like button if you like the video. So anyway, have an amazing day guys. I'm going back into building again, Kayan al-Bashar, because I'm in the squirrel zone. Bye bye!